Because that's what the world tells us. Oh, to get promoted, you need more knowledge. To get promoted, you need more expertise. To get promoted, you need more technical skills. When in reality, to get promoted, you need to believe you're worthy of being promoted. To make more money, you have to believe you're worthy of making more money. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. You know the voice, you know the intro, you know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO. Woo-woo! With yours truly, Dr. E is in the house. Hope you are doing awesome. Hope you are crushing your first quarter. You are on track. You are focused. You are aligned. And you are living the dream. And here's the cool part. It's your dream. So you can actually make it whatever you want it to be. And before I get into today's topic, I just want to go there for a little bit. You know, I always like to do a little bit of mindset motivation because to me, that is the most important part of being a CISO. It's the most important part of being world class. It's the most important part of living. Because here's the reality. I've learned this over and over and over again, and it took me a long time. For almost 15 years of my life, I was what you call an instructor. I would teach cybersecurity classes all around the world. At the time, I don't know if it still is, but I had the numbers and the data. I had the best-selling cybersecurity course that I wrote, I authored, and I was the primary instructor of, Security Essentials, and taught that typically 20 times a year for 15 years. So do the math, right? It adds up thousands upon thousands of in-person students, thousands upon thousands of virtual students. And I loved teaching. I loved sharing knowledge. But what I never stepped back to really look at is why were some very successful and others weren't. So we'd have this classroom of 100 students, and they all were hearing the same thing. They all had access to the same instructor. They all were able to ask whatever questions they wanted. And then I would sometimes catch up with them 3, 5, 10 years later. And it's interesting how some were still in the same place. Some got promoted up to senior security engineers. Some moved on to other positions. Some moved on to other careers. And it was funny, I'm going at, okay, why, if all of them had the same instructor with the same material and the same knowledge, how come some got promoted and others didn't? How come some were making 100K and some were making 400K? And I never really spent a lot of time until the last several years of pondering and coming up with an answer to that question. And the answer to that question is, of course, simple. It's the mindset. There were some people in there that believed they were security engineer material and they were worth 100K. So they stayed in that position and made about 100K for 10 or 15 years. There were other people that had the mindset or belief that they were senior security engineers and worth 300K. And guess what? They made 300K. And it's one of those crazy things that the mindset, not the knowledge, ultimately dictated someone's success and how far they went in their career and how far they went in the world. So what I started realizing is, if I really want to help people, if I really want to change people's lives, I have to do more than just give them what they want. I have to give them more than just technical instruction. I have to give them more than just teaching them 6 days of networking, protocols, firewalls, policies, IDS, Windows, Unix, Mac, and all that stuff, because that's great knowledge, and that's what everybody thinks they want. Because that's what the world tells us. Oh, to get promoted, you need more knowledge. To get promoted, you need more expertise. To get promoted, you need more technical skills. When in reality, to get promoted, you need to believe you're worthy of being promoted. To make more money, you have to believe you're worthy of making more money. Because you can take as much training as you want, and we've seen this. We've seen people who have taken 15 training courses, they have certifications up the wazoo, and they're still in the same position. And some people have taken little training, little certs, and they're making 5 or 6 times as much as that other person. So it ultimately is going to come down to your thermostat, what you believe you're worth, what you believe you're capable of earning. So that's the $1 million question. And to me, you know I love questions, and I'm always coming up with new ones. And I just came up with a new one the last few days. Actually, my coach did. So I give my even I have coaches, right? Everybody who is wildly successful has coaches. And here's the thing to remember. You hire a coach to help you shift a mindset in a specific area. So I go in each year and I say, where am I currently stuck? Where do I currently want to be somewhere and I'm not, and I'm stuck? I haven't been able to do it for a year. And then I go in and I hire the best coach in that specific area. Now it's funny because I have to be real careful, because sometimes when I hire a coach in one area, I'm actually better than them in another area. And they are curious of my success. And then what ends up happening, and it's only happened a few times because I'm very aware and make sure it doesn't happen, but I paid somebody to coach me and I ended up coaching them. Right? So you're going in and you're not typically hiring a coach for everything. It's what is the one area that you've been the most stuck, that if you could get unstuck, would have the biggest transformational change in your life. And that's essentially why people hire me. And I make it very clear. If your biggest problem right now is becoming a CISO, you've tried to become a CISO, you want to become a CISO, and you haven't been able to for over a year, I'm your person. I'm your coach. I'm your guy. That's my specialty. If you're stuck in other areas, I can recommend other folks to you. I'm probably not the person, but that's my niche right now. My current niche is showing people how to get unstuck in that area. So that's something you should always be asking yourself. What is the biggest barrier right now to my growth? What is the one area that is holding me back that if I could figure out and get unstuck would have the biggest transformational change in my life? And that's what you should be focusing on. And that's the coach you should hire. So everyone has coaches. So the new question that we just came up with this week, to give credit where credit due, is to me very powerful. And here's the question. What life do you want to experience? What is the experience that you want to get out of life? And I love it because it's something that I've been playing around with in my mind for a long time. We all talk about vision boards. We all talk about the ideas of vision boards, and we put on your vision board your G6, your Lamborghini, your penthouse condo, whatever it is that you want. But the reality is that really what I want? Or do I believe that will give me an experience, and that is why I ultimately want it, right? So it's not that we necessarily want the Lamborghini, but it's because that Lamborghini gives us a new experience. It lets us be viewed a different way and experience life in a different way than if we're driving a different car or a different automobile. So to me, this is why you see people achieve all this success and are miserable. Because yes, you could get the Lamborghini, you can get the G6, you can get the penthouse, you can make $50 million. And you can still be miserable if you don't know what it is you want to experience. And here's the other crazy part. And this is where you start having a lot of fun with your mind. Are there ways you can start to experience that today? Do you really need a Lamborghini to experience what you think you will experience if you have a Lamborghini? And do you really need $50 million to experience what you think you would experience with $50 million? Because if we can start getting down to what we want to experience, maybe we can actually create that experience today. Maybe we can do it without having to necessarily achieve those other items. So that's sort of a fun little, I don't curse on my podcast, but a little mind F that you get to go through on it to mess around with it. But that's sort of where I'm playing with today. So I just urge you to just mess around with that question a little bit over the next few days, the next few weeks of, is it you really want possessions? Is it you really want money? Or is it you really want experiences? And then transform that vision board from physical items to what it is you ultimately want to experience. And maybe you can actually get there quicker and faster than you thought. So that's sort of my little mind drop of a little mindset work, because like I said, that's really the key. If I can get you to believe or experience that you are capable of being a CISO, everything else becomes easy. But the topic really for today is, it's funny. I do a lot of lives. I do a lot of social. I do a lot of different free recordings out there. And it's always amazes me what topics get a lot of interest and what don't. So one of my friends were doing this gag thing where he's like, dude, wouldn't it be cool if we all wore fur coats? And I'm like, dude, I'm not buying a fur coat. That's crazy. They're like, no, they have fake ones on Amazon for $30. So I'm like, okay, $30, no animals are injured in the making of this. So I get this ridiculous $30 fur coat on Amazon, and I post a picture of it. And it's funny. I've always told my team I want content to go viral. I actually thought it would be me talking about mindset and fiction versus nonfiction and false stories. I thought it would be about my CISO, how to brief executives. I lay down some really intense content that I put my heart and soul into, and that doesn't go viral. Me with a fur coat goes viral. I mean, go figure. It's like life is crazy sometimes, right? And this is where I go back to the question, what do you want to experience? Right? I want to experience my content being seen by a lot of people, a lot of comments, a lot of fun, a lot of enjoyment. And I thought it was by laying down really deep, serious teaching and learnings. But the reality is, to experience what I wanted was just something silly. Put on a silly fur coat, right? And that got us there. So that's crazy. But the other topic, you'll notice I'm not here to speak about Dr. Cole wearing fake fur coats from Amazon. But today's topic, the other one that I'm actually surprised piqued so much interest and actually caused a lot of controversy, was this idea of we're in World War III. Not we're going to be or there might be, but we are in World War III. We are in a cyber war. And I guess what surprises me is, to me, it seemed obvious. Like I thought I was pointing out the obvious, but many people are like, no, you're overhyping it. It's not true. It's not correct. It's not accurate. But let's just think about it. What is a war? A war is when two or more sides are attacking, trying to cause harm or damage or acquire something that the other side has. Well, wouldn't you consider these cyber attacks war? They're breaking into companies, holding information ransom, and having the companies pay $5 or $10 million. They're doing extortion attacks. They're stealing information and selling it on the web. They're targeting individuals and wiping out their entire bank accounts. People are losing their lives with some of these attacks. People are going in and suffering major hardship. People are being cyberbullied. People are taking their own lives because of what is being done online. People's identities are being stolen. I'm having a hard time not fitting that into the category of war. Right? That sure sounds like a war. Right? It sure sounds like people are attacking, coming after us, trying to cause harm, trying to cause damage. So it seems to fit and check every box of what the definition of a war is. And then world. It's happening from all over the world. It's happening from Russia and China and all over, and Venezuela, and we're involved. So it sure seems like it's multiple countries. So if it's multiple countries attacking, going after, causing harm, trying to steal information, causing mental damage, monetary damage, and loss of life, sure seems to fit the definition of a world war. And the reason why I think it's important we call a spade is because companies, individuals, entities, and countries need to take this more seriously. The biggest problem CISOs have is most companies hire a CISO today. Not saying it's the right thing. I'm not saying all companies do this, but a percent of companies hire CISOs today to check a box. It's because it's required by regulation. It's required by certifications. It's required by their board, whatever it is, that they need to have a CISO. But they don't take the CISO seriously. Let's just look at a few examples. Where does your chief officer sit? So if you look at a company, you have a CEO, a COO, a CFO, a CIO, a CISO, maybe chief legal counsel. You maybe have 5 or 6. In most of those organizations, they have a building and they have an executive suite. And in that executive suite, the CEO sits, the COO sits, the CFO sits, the chief legal counsel sits. Where does the CISO sit? On a different floor in a different building with the IT technical team next to the data center. Sure doesn't look like they're treating that as a chief officer, right? So it's that situation where they're giving somebody a title, but they're not treating them with the respect because they don't understand the severity of the problem. Or we see a lot of cases where they only hire CISOs or get CISOs involved when there's actually an attack, when there's actually damage, because otherwise what they're really saying is, we don't think this is a real threat. And if you prove it's a real threat, then maybe we'll take it seriously for a period of time. But then we forget about the threat and we take it less seriously. So to me, we need to do a better job of recognizing just how bad a problem it is. Now, what makes cyber security more difficult than other problems is, for some crazy reason, the media doesn't like it. The media avoids it, and inadvertently the media underplays it. Most other areas, you know it's severe, you know it's critical, you know it's important because it's 24/7 media. Look at COVID. I mean, you couldn't go on any news channel for over an entire year where COVID wasn't up somewhere. They had the COVID counter, right? The number of infections, the number of deaths. I mean, it was the hottest topic. It didn't matter who you were, where you were. I don't watch the news, but I get exposed to it. Gyms, airports, right? There's enough exposure that you were fully aware that COVID was alive and well. You couldn't avoid it. I don't think there was anybody that didn't know or understand or hear about COVID. Yet, you look at the impact and the damage that the cyber war World War III is having, it far outweighs COVID. It far outweighs the number of people impacted, the severity to our country and our world, the monetary impact, and all those other factors. By far, this cyber war is much more impactful and much more damaging than COVID was. Yet nobody's talking about it. Everybody knew about COVID. Very few people, if I went in and said, do you realize we're in a cyber war? Do you realize we're in World War III? Nobody would know. Nobody would realize. So it's one of those weird things where the media, for some reason, through their lack of covering what is happening, is actually creating a false narrative that this isn't a problem, that there really isn't an issue. You have no idea how many people and how many entities I talk to where they're like, Eric, is it really that bad? And I start showing them real numbers and they're like, I had no clue. I had no clue that billions upon billions of dollars are being stolen every year, that billions of Americans are being impacted, that billions of identities are being stolen, because nobody's talking about it. So as a chief information security officer, gather the data. Know one of my rules. What's one of my rules? And this is what I always tell people when they're like, oh, Eric, you're overblowing this. I'm like, you know me. The way I live my life is let data drive decisions, not emotions. Let data drive decisions, not emotions. Let data drive decisions. The reason why nobody wants to talk about World War III or the cyber war is because it's emotional. Wars are emotional. Many people, depending on age, can remember some war that we were in or inadvertently in, and it's an emotional thing. So nobody likes to hear the words World War. Nobody wants to hear cyber war. Nobody wants to hear World War III because it triggers emotional responses that we don't like, so we want to bury it. But look at the data, my friends. The data doesn't lie. Look at the number of entities that are being impacted. And the problem is, as I go back to, the media is not covering it, so it seems like it's not a problem. But it is a huge problem. I am shocked. I contact media all the time about data breaches and impact, and they're like, Eric, it's just not a hot topic for us. I'm like, really? Hundreds of millions of people having their identity stolen is not a hot topic for you? Then what is? Right? It's crazy. But it seems to me if it's not political driven, then they don't want to cover it. But the point is, your job as a CISO has to be a beacon of truth. You have to be the person that speaks the truth. Now, once again, don't do it from an emotional podium. Don't run around, World War III, emotional. Let the data drive the decision. Give them the data. Show them what's happening. Show them how many companies are being impacted. Show them how many companies are being targeted. Because unfortunately, and like I said, it's going to be real interesting when the truth comes out, but there are people that are afraid that if we tell the truth, that people are going to get so scared and so petrified that they're not going to want to know it. Great example. Last week, right? The phone systems. I don't know if you were impacted. I don't know. I think it was nationwide, but I know I'm in Virginia. My kids are in the Midwest. Our cell service went out for 4 or 5 hours. Pretty sure, from what I know and what I hear in the chatter, it was a cyber attack. Oh, we don't want to talk about that. We can't. So they hush it. Why? Why are we not willing to tell the truth? Our entire phone network was taken down for many, many hours, most likely because of a cyber attack, but we're going to bury it. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to cover it. We're going to hide it. Because they're afraid that if people knew the truth, they would get really concerned. Well, guess what? We should be really concerned. If you're at war, we shouldn't be burying it. So it's one of those things, if you want to be a world-class CISO, you have to educate your executives on the truth. Because I'll tell you right now, if executives knew the truth, you'd have an office in the executive suite. If executives knew the truth, you'd have a bigger budget. If the executives knew the truth, you would be invited to every single executive meeting. If the executives knew the truth, there wouldn't be a single board meeting where at least a quarter of it wasn't talking about cybersecurity, cyber protection, and the cyber war. But because they don't know the truth, and CISOs are not educating our executives, it's not only putting you in a position of weakness, but it's putting these companies in a position of weakness. And it's funny because this is not a new concept. I was sort of laughing because I wrote this book, Cyber Crisis. It was published, so I wrote it in 2020. It was published in 2021. Now, irony is irony, is it was published right around the same time as the Colonial Pipeline hack. And it's funny because to me, I live on the East Coast, so we were impacted. Gas stations were closed for multiple days. There were lines at gas stations in order to get gas because they knew we were going to run out of gas because of the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. Now, I know on the West Coast you weren't impacted, so it depends on where you live, but it was real. Like, people were starting to get concerned on, okay, gas stations are closed for a couple days. Like, at what point do we run out of gas and we get out our bicycles? I mean, we were sort of contemplating. I remember we were being real careful of where we drove and where we went, and came out around the same time as the book. So once again, nothing to do with it. Sometimes timing is just amazing, right? And it really helped with the sale of the book. But it's funny how it's sort of, as I'm writing this, as we're going into December 2020 and January, February, and I'm writing a book about cyber crisis, protecting your business from real world threats in the virtual world, just reading the title to make sure I get it accurate. I'm like, there hasn't been a lot of attacks, right? Are people really going to believe me? Right? And then, of course, that happened. But then we haven't really had any major attacks since then. But it's crazy because last year, 2023, so almost 2 years after this book was published, I'm sitting with a friend of mine who's sort of, we're talking about, what are the big issues and threats and how I position my company. And he didn't even know I wrote a book, let alone 7 books. And he just happens to take the book, opens it up to chapter 7, and he looks at me and starts reading. And this is the only reason I'm looking down, because I want to get exact. Our nation is currently at war. Whether we realize it or not, you're in the middle of World War III. The reason why many people don't recognize it is because it's a different type of world war. In this war, every single country is involved. Every single country is both being attacked and attacking other countries. It doesn't involve bombs, weapons, bullets, aircraft, or Navy ships, but instead involves packets, the internet, and computers, which can be far more impactful. We're at cyber war. Whether we like it or not, countries are actively targeting and attacking each other, disrupt both intellectual property and national infrastructure. This was written in 2020 and published in 2021. And I actually forgot I wrote it. And I actually sat on it, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Right? And then it always takes a good friend to wake you up and raise your awareness. And I'm like, you know something, this is absolutely true. So I just wanted to do an episode because world-class CISOs control the truth. And the reason why most CISOs are suffering today is because the executives don't understand the truth. If you're not sitting with other executives, they don't know the truth. If you're not getting the budgets you need, they don't know the truth. If they fire you because a cyber attack occurs because nobody listened to you in the first place, they don't know the truth. If you're not invited to every executive meeting, they don't know the truth. If you're not invited to every board meeting, they don't know the truth. If you're not presenting at least 30 minutes quarterly to your board of directors, they don't know the truth. So if you want to become world-class, if you want to shift the entire trajectory of your career, it's time that we start letting people know the truth. Whether they like it or not, whether they get emotional or not, the reality, the truth is, my friends, is we are in the middle of World War III. We are in a cyber war. And until people start recognizing it, owning it, and it starts with information security officers, until chief information security officers embrace the truth and speak the truth, we're going to continue to struggle. We'll continue to have a difficult time. So if you want to be a world-class CISO, if you want to change the world, embrace the truth that we're in a World War III and start letting your executives know the facts so they can also believe the truth.